Hello, and this is Group E's presentation for this week. So the situation presented to a group is, the question was, library staff members in two cities filed complaints with the EEOC arguing that they were subjected to a hostile work environment. So the libraries where they worked did not provide filters on their internet terminals. The staffers were forced to view offensive material on the screens of the library, on the screens of the library users, and pornographic printouts left on the library printers. And our question is, discuss the conflict between a hostile work environment and freedom of speech. And without considering the current laws, how would you resolve the conflict here? So to approach this issue, we must first recognize the effects of a hostile work environment that it has on the workers within it. Next, we must consider the guidelines to freedom of speech. So the guidelines to freedom of speech are as follows. 1. Distinguish speech from action. The laws must not chill expression of legal speech. We should not reduce adults to reading only what's fit for children, and also force the issue of freedom of speech by the least restrictive means. So our first item was the hostile work environment. So limiting what can and cannot be viewed should be decided by the company that's offering free internet access to its patrons. If it could be considered offensive to a vast majority of the patrons, then the company should be able to censor to protect their customers or patrons in this case. Now, the library situation is no different than if you're in a school and they censor certain websites to protect the students. It's the same concept, it's just applied to a corporation rather than a public building or public facility. The filters are also in place for legal purposes. Now, the next item we looked at was, how do we look at this, concerning freedom of speech? Now, limiting the material that the library patrons can view goes against their freedom of speech rights. So even though the material is offensive and it can be argued that it's morally wrong to view such material in a library, especially where children are present, it is still legally protected, and as such, the patrons have a right to view it. Now, if the libraries were allowed to determine what they feel is offensive and put filters to block it, what criteria would they use? The libraries would use their own opinions on what is offensive and block the material based on those opinions. Now, in spite of the offensive material being legally protected, many libraries are still going ahead and putting filters in place to block what they feel is offensive. Now, this goes against the freedom of speech protection, but faced with hostile workplace lawsuits, as precedents have shown, the libraries would rather face a First Amendment lawsuit. It is far less financially damaging. So we looked at how can we resolve the conflict. So the first obvious step in resolving this conflict is to add some sort of filter to the internet. Now, these filters are applied in most businesses and in schools, so they would be easy to implement in a library. Next, add some program that forces the users to log into the computers with unique IDs for tracking purposes. This would not only allow for the viewers of the offensive items to be caught and blocked, but could also help in aiding police if the patrons had used the computers for criminal purposes before committing a crime. Lastly, it's important to set clear guidelines on computer use. Now, with these guidelines, a guest would be completely responsible if he or she broke the guidelines and forced an employee to view items that they found to be offensive. So in conclusion, we agreed that the library should filter internet sites. Now, filtering software reduces the number of distractions and therefore furthers the educational mission of the libraries. Now, the primary purpose of any educational institution, libraries included, is to educate, not entertain. So removing or not having the filters to begin with, we feel would greatly undermine the mission of the schools and libraries by allowing the students or patrons to play games, view inappropriate material, and this would be a distraction to their peers and the staff. Now, concerning the freedom of speech laws, in our view, they are putting especially children in a dangerous environment at public libraries by offering protection to patrons who access offensive material such as pornography. That's the end of our presentation this week, and thank you.